The CloudShare plugin for TFS in Visual Studio allows development teams and QA teams to automatically deploy their applications to the cloud for testing and collaboration. As you can see, I am logged into a Visual Studio already configured with the CloudShare Build plugin. Inside of Visual Studio, you can see several builds that I have already run and build definitions. These definitions are each uniquely configured to the CloudShare TeamLabs product. When a deploy happens, it automatically provisions an environment inside of CloudShare, copies the code, builds the code, runs any sort of scripts that you would like to run, and takes a snapshot of the environment for QA engineers and developers to access later. Let's take a look at this build definition. The first step in configuring the TFS plugin is to provide your CloudShare API key and ID. This links your TFS environment to your CloudShare TeamLabs account. Next, you get to specify the project that you've been assigned to. In CloudShare, we allow organizations to have many projects. For example, you may have one project related to a particular type of application you're building, or a project might be related to a customer of yours. A blueprint. The blueprint is the base environment where all of your builds are going to take place. For example, you may have a web application that always requires a SQL server, an analytics server, and a web front end. This is your base blueprint where all builds will happen so that you have consistency throughout your builds and remove the variables that might occur with different configurations. Next, we have the policy. The policy is how long the environment will last after the build happens. Most organizations like to run builds and immediately snapshot the environment for later use. Some organizations may want to run the builds and have an environment running for the developers to access immediately after the build. And finally, you get to decide whether you're going to use the base blueprint, the original blueprint environment, or the latest snapshot of that environment. We'll select latest. Now that we've specified the environment where the build happens, we get to define how it happens. Not only does CloudShare copy your code over and build it, it allows you to do specific operations on the VMs in the environment. For example, we can select a VM and tell it to run a specific script stored on that VM. This script may do things like silent installs, check configuration, do some basic testing, whatever you need to configure. You can take it one step further and do things like run testing tools on the VM after the build happens, so that when you view the VM, you're just looking at the testing results. Once you've added the scripts, you can change the order in which they run, and these can be bat files or any other scripts that can run on the VM. Now that we've defined how a build works, why don't we go ahead and run a build? I'm going to right-click on our build and queue a new build. And you can see build 71 has just been initiated. Let's take a look at the CloudShare environment where this build is happening. I'm going to log into my CloudShare TeamLabs account where all of my environments and my team's environments are stored. Immediately, you will notice that I have done several builds today, and those environments are available for me here. I can also see the activities of my team and the project that I belong to. And there's a nice graph that shows the activity over months and weeks. This allows me to do reporting on my development team. If I were to access the build that we just ran, you can see that the environment is currently being loaded as the build just completed. Once the environment is available, I can RDP into the VM and in this VM I can actually view my deployment script. Because what we ended up deploying is actually a web application, I can also just view the web application for testing. So I close out of my RDP session, view the details of the VM, click on the web access URL, and I get the web application hosted on the VM, which is the application I just deployed. If there's any sort of bugs, I, as a QA engineer, can take a snapshot of the environment and give that snapshot a complete environment, whether it's a single virtual machine or multiple, to the developers so they can see where the error happened with configuration code and all. I can also edit the environment to change and test different configurations with more memory, more disk, and CPU. Because I am server administrator on these VMs, I can also install other applications. Could be testing tools, could be other code or other configurations, which gives the development team the ability to test things that they could not do otherwise in an on-premise development and testing environment. As you can see, CloudShare's TeamLabs product allows development teams to extend their testing to the cloud and offer more flexibility, less reliance on internal IT teams and infrastructure, and the ability to do more rapid testing than they would have been able to otherwise. If you would like a trial of CloudShare TeamLabs plus TFS, contact us today for a 30-day trial for you and your team.